Hi there, I'm Stan Baker, one of the hosts of Circle Forum, along with Shelley Steele and Steve Young. In this episode, we're going to explore how restorative practices can elevate social-emotional learning in secondary schools. Join us as we discuss the article titled, Investing in Adolescent High School Climate and Organizational Context Shapes Student Development and Educational Attainment. Phew, that's a mouthful. The link is in the podcast description. When I listen to this conversation again, I'm reminded of the tremendous potential that we have to positively impact the lives of our students. I think it's important to learn more about restorative practices because it can help you create a more compassionate, supportive, and effective learning environment. So if you're currently struggling to address the complex needs of adolescents, and candidly, who isn't in schools these days, then this episode is for you because it can provide valuable insights and actionable steps to make a meaningful difference. Some of the main things we talk about: first, the significance of investing in the social and emotional well-being of high school students. Second, practical strategies for integrating restorative practices into your educational approach. And third, the long-term benefits of adopting restorative practices. At the end of the episode, be sure to visit our website, www.restorative.ca, for more information. And if you find this valuable, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. And now let's listen into the conversation with Shelley, Steve, and me, Stan. Another article that's come into my inbox recently is about investing in adolescent high school climate and organizational context shape student development and educational attainment. What a title. It is really a great article with some interesting findings that talk about intentionally investing in the social and emotional learning of adolescents.
Yeah, it's interesting. Often by the time kids were getting to secondary school or grade 8, the feeling generally is that they're supposed to have all this, not necessarily all the social emotional stuff figured out, but they should know how school runs and what's expected of them. But I think and just do it. I think what is forgotten is that is a really tough time socially, emotionally for kids. And we used to see grade 10 was almost a transition year. Kids either got into a lot of problems or they settled in and found their way. Around kids' attendance dropped off in grade 10. This is just anecdotal. I have no specific research, but this was my experience. Teen pregnancies were very high at that time, a lot of behavior. So kids were either settling in or they weren't. And we saw a lot of attendance issues come out of that time as well.
Yeah, and there was always this sort of belief that by the time kids got to high school, they should have all their ducks in a row and have life figured out. And they just show up, go to a class, and learn it and whatnot. And I think back to it's very similar to the way we taught reading. And in elementary school, they always said in elementary school, we kids learn to read, and in secondary school, they read to learn. In other words, by the time they get to high school, they should all know how to read. Now we've done tons of studies to realize that high school kids still need to learn how to read. It's no different than in social emotional things. They don't have it all together when they get to high school. They're going through a lot of changes and they don't have all the answers to all of what's life given them. And so they need that help. And sometimes not having those answers really impacts on their learning. And if a kid is not feeling very good, if they're not getting along with their peers, if they're not getting along with the staff at the school, they're struggling. Maybe this kid's a former A student, now they're a B, a C student. They might still get through school. They probably will still get through high school and graduate, but are they really maximizing their learning and doing the best that they could? We look at graduation rates and say, look at the graduation rate of that high school. Okay, that's great. But are some of those kids graduating just barely? And they could be excelling because of some of these issues too. So even though our graduation rates have gone up exponentially in the last few years, it's still not where it could be because a lot of kids are still struggling. And a lot of it, I believe, and get to Shelley's point, I don't have any studies, but I believe a lot of it has to do with their social emotional state and their learning and how comfortable they feel at school, and that some of them are just putting up with it and getting it out of the way so they can move on with life.
Interesting stat would to track post-secondary and how many are completing their post-secondary. What is their social emotional state like when they're there? Because often they don't do well. This is secondary, they've been able to nurse it along, and now they're out there on their own and they don't have the same nurturing the same way. Just because you graduate high school doesn't mean that you're being successful post-secondary. So that's the social emotional pieces that you don't have the coping skills, you don't have the resources internally to manage things on your own more.
It's interesting to me that we have to have an article to say that this matters to kids,
Mm.
that this matters to their short and long-term trajectory, that this matters to their graduation or their life after high school. Like it's amazing that we have to have that conversation. And I'm just wondering, in terms of the work that we do and also restorative practices in particular, uh, everybody can identify these problems. So what is it that we can do? What's the how-to that restorative practice brings to this?
The best way to start addressing social emotional learning and what is going on in kids' head is to talk to them. You've got to talk to them. And who's the best person to have that conversation? Let's start with the classroom teacher who sees them every single day. And maybe they've got them every day for one semester, or maybe they've got them for 2 semesters. And over the years, they might see the same kid 3 or 4 times in their subject areas. They can start to develop those relationships with those kids in the classrooms so they can start to learn what is it that's getting in their way, or what is it that we could do that makes it easier for them. And kids can hear from other kids how to solve the problem because the adults don't have all the answers in the world. The beauty of restorative practices is we get everybody talking. The teacher in the room is just one other participant in the circle. Maybe they're facilitating it, but the answers are coming from their peers, and that's where kids are really going to start to make changes. Hey, my friends are all saying I should do this or I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should really start listening to my peers. So the power of restorative practices is people are starting to talk. And when they talk, they feel they have a voice, they feel they're they're included, they feel part of the community.
One of the other things the article talks about is supporting social emotional learning is having that effective schools have rigorous curriculum or teaching, as well as the relationship piece in there. And that just again speaks to restorative practices. There's high expectations and high standards that need to be met, but then the relationship piece is that I'm going to support you to get there when you need it. You don't need it all the time, but when you need it, you know that support is there. And they're finding that having those two together, that there's still the high expectations, but the high support to meet those expectations are helping students with their social emotional needs.
And I think part of, for me, what restorative practice brings to it, it's the difference between telling students and asking them, that you're actually engaging them in a conversation by asking open-ended questions. And even just asking, so what's happening in terms of your learning or not, or what you're struggling with, or how we can solve this problem together as a class. And then intentionally taking the time to build those kinds of things in your science class, in your social sciences, in your phys ed classes, like that you actually integrate this into those classes so that it becomes more than just a subject matter. It becomes the way that we are together as a classroom community. It's for semester one or semester two, but while we're here, this is how we're going to be working together as a community.
And that's an interesting point because although the teachers may change, the students generally will be the same kids that are within a mix together, give or take a few things. So that's supporting them creating a community as well. Although the adult may change, the community of students will be there.
We've talked about restorative circles and restorative practices as a pedagogical approach. It's not just a half an hour every Friday afternoon or Monday morning or Wednesday morning where we talk about how the classroom's going. That's all good stuff, and I wouldn't say no to that. But after a while, if kids are in a school where this is the common approach year after year, and all the teachers in the school are doing it, it becomes so ingrained in what they expect going into a classroom every day. Hey, we expect the teachers to allow us to talk about these issues. And we expect to be respected when we offer a dissenting opinion about something. And you know what? It becomes a whole approach to learning that is different than the sage on the stage type of learning that a lot of schools are still employing and teachers are employing. I think that over time, if if schools continue to use a restorative approach year after year, and all their teachers are trained in it, that they'll find that it gets easier and easier, and it becomes ingrained in every subject matter as a pedagogical approach, not just a standalone approach to building relationships.
It's going to take a shift, though. It's going to
Oh,
take a shift for the adults
sure.
to start to look at things in a different way, to look at things in terms of rather than curriculum delivery, look at things from a problem solving, collaborative mindset. So it's actually a mindset shift that needs to take place in order to make these kinds of difference. And now the research is saying that's what we need to do, which is it's always great when research backs up what you intuitively know is the way you need to be going, right?
Yeah, we've done enough circles in high schools to know that the kids love it. The kids buy into it real quick. It's the adults that have trouble accepting it. And over time, when adults see it and they see it successful, they do come that way. But they're the hardest sell. It's the adults to sell. The kids love it. They absolutely. Shelley, you and I have done some circles together in high schools. It doesn't take the kids long before they go, "Hey, this is great. When can we do it again?" And the teacher, I don't know. We've done it once. Do we really need to do it again? Absolutely. It's not a one-off thing, but kids do like it. They like the time to talk and debate in a respectful forum where the quiet kids can voice their concerns and ask the questions and know that they can be heard.
So as a school leader, one of the things you can consider that's within the realm of your influence, if you're a principal or vice principal, is to run a staff meeting in a circle. If you need some help with that, get someone to co-facilitate with you. I was part of a staff meeting where the first half was run by the principal in a regular way, and people were sitting at tables all around the library. And so the tables were engaged with their own kinds of activities. Somebody was marking at one of their tables. There were little side conversations. And then when I had to lead the part that I came in for, we moved all the tables out of the way and moved our chairs into a circle. And suddenly all that marking stopped, all those side conversations stopped, and there was a focus on just one question that we had to discuss. And the difference was just so stark. It was uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
for the staff initially. And that's okay. And you can expect that with your students as well. But it's good to feel that that discomfort, so that you can also recognize that when you make those kinds of changes for your students, that is something that you need to empathize with. So modeling it in staff meetings, in committee meetings, in divisional meetings is a way to start. And the purpose is to show staff members, particularly in high school, that this can work. This can become a very natural way of having conversations.
I did have a staff meeting once where a teacher was at the back of the room reading a novel.
Oh,
Staff meeting, sat there reading it like a pocketbook through the whole meeting. Like, really? Like, yeah.
I've
Thank
also
you.
been at secondary staff meetings where there's a group of teachers, often tech or athletics,
standing
and
at the back.
standing at the back or at a table at the back, and they're just yucking it up the
Yeah,
whole
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
yeah.
The other interesting thing is that dynamic actually also happens at principals meetings,
Oh,
where you get
absolutely it does.
where you get the secondary principals all together, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
are like, it's just whoa.
Yeah.
But I would do stuff like the teacher that was reading the novel sitting at the back. She always sat at the back. So the next time we had a staff meeting, I just stood at the back. They all came in and sat down. I just started the meeting standing right next to her and ran
Just
the
like
whole
you would
meeting
do
from the
with
back.
kids, right? You're going to
Like,
stand beside the
and
one that.
people had to turn around. Look at, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to stand here and talk from here. I said, make sure everybody can hear me at the back, because the back is now the front.
We got to figure this out for us as adult to
Yeah,
adult in
yeah.
schools. We've always used restorative practice as a way of dealing with students. Really, what we're talking about is we can do some small things just adult
Mhm.
to adult, which will help us then in our work with students. Investing in adolescents in high school makes sense. We encourage all educators to reflect on the potential for positive change within our schools by prioritizing the social and emotional well-being of our students. By embracing restorative practices and fostering open, collaborative conversations, We can create learning environments where every student feels valued, heard, and supported. The path to change begins with us, the adults in the educational community. To access additional resources, visit our website, www.restorative.ca. Subscribe on YouTube. Remember that as the adults in the building, we can transform education and empower our students to thrive.